Hi, this is Andrew Rapp, owner of Toggle Product Photography. Thanks for joining this tutorial on apparel photography. As a reminder, if you'd like to try a free trial of our service, you can do so afterwards by visiting our online store. So we get quite a few questions from customers about the role of Photoshop and post-production in the creation of product images. This tutorial will take you through the typical work that happens on a shirt photograph, and you'll get to see how we move from the raw image that's captured to the final product. So first of all, of course, the photograph needs to be taken. As you can see, the initial photograph is very rough. We've done some styling to get the basic shape of the shirt and also done some things like stuffing it with bubble wrap just to provide a little texture to it. So the first thing that needs to happen is we need to separate the shirt from its background. This is done by drawing what's called a clipping path. A clipping path is made by using the pen tool in Photoshop to draw along the outline of an item. If you're familiar with the magic wand tool, which most people are, creating a clipping path is very similar. It just provides for a finer edge. So for this photograph, fortunately, we've actually already done a complete clipping path on it, which you can see here. And the first thing that happens is we use that clipping path then to separate the object from its background. That allows us then to work with the shirt separate from its background on a pure white screen. So the first thing I'm going to start with then is warping the shirt a little bit to come up with a better shape. Right now it's a little broad across the shoulders, a little fat through here. So I use Photoshop's warp tool to come up with a basic shape for it. The warp tool is very handy because it allows you to work with its separate areas of the image as opposed to just transforming the entire photograph. So as you can see, it can be used to then take the image to something like this, where I've brought the shoulders in a little bit, I've squared it up a little bit, and made an overall more pleasing silhouette. Now it's time to go in and deal with some specific areas that have trouble. And for that, we're going to use the liquefy function. Liquefy is a very powerful filter in Photoshop that most people don't use, and it's a shame because it really can do tremendous things for your images. Basically, it allows you to push pixels around the screen however you'd like. So in an instance like this where I want to lower this shoulder overall, I can just pull it down like that. I can also, by reducing the size of the brush, make very small adjustments, like pushing in where seams may be. This allows us to further fine-tune the silhouette of the shirt and create exactly the shape the customer wants. You can see here the difference after the shirt has been warped. This is basically before and after. So now that we've got a pretty good overall shape to the shirt, we're going to go through and do what most people think of when they think of retouching, which is getting rid of spots and things. The camera's always going to be a little bit dirty, the clothing may have spots on it, so you'll see things like this. For that, we typically use the stamp tool in Photoshop, or sometimes we'll use the patch tool, and that allows us to pick specific areas and remove the spots very simply. You can see in the final product then, most of those types of defects go away. But there's also some larger defects that aren't possible to just stamp away. These are things like these wrinkles in here, some dark shadows in here and things like that. We want some texture to the shirt, but we don't want those things to be distracting. So what we're going to do is we go in and we actually just lighten them up by sort of painting over those areas. And what I mean by that is we'll actually go into, oops, apologies, I'm going to be a little clumsy with this because I'm used to working on a 30-inch monitor and not on my laptop screen. So what we'll do is we'll take a stamp tool and we'll paint over these areas. We sample another area of the shirt and we paint over these very finely. I hope you can see at this resolution, but basically we're spraying just a light amount of color over those areas. That takes dark shadows, makes them a little bit softer. Obviously, we don't want to go too far or you'll lose all of the pattern in the shirt. But this allows us to smooth out these wrinkles in a very subtle type of way. So again, here's the final result after that step has been completed. So now that the overall texture of the shirt is pretty solid, we're going to go in and we're going to actually create some texture where we do want it. So you may have noticed when I warped the shirt earlier, I actually made these kind of folds and wrinkles in the bottom of it. So that way, if you want to see the bases again, the shirt doesn't look as just flat. It looks more like it's hanging. And so when I had liquefied, I pulled up these little folds in it here. But now they look a little strange because there's no shadowing here. So what I'm going to do to correct that problem is I actually make another layer of the shirt and I darken it. So that layer looks something like this. So I darken the entire shirt, but I don't want the entire shirt darkened. I basically only want specific areas. So what I do is I go in, first of all I cover that whole layer, and then with a brush I expose areas that I want that shadowing, that darker color to show through. So you can see here, if I had exposed this area, you'd get something like that, right? Instead, I've done these more subtle brushings so that you get just enough shadow that it looks like the ripples are actually there. So again, before, after, before, after. So now when I look at the shirt, I'm overall fairly happy with what I've got. I've got a nice smooth look without any deep distracting shadows, but I also have some nice rippling in it to give a nice gentle appearance. The last thing I'm going to do is put a little shadow on the object so that it looks like it's actually lying on something. Now Photoshop does have a drop shadow feature which just creates a basic drop shadow on the object, but it always looks pretty fake because it's a very simplistic tool. So what we do is we actually hand draw the shadows. And the way that we do that is first we create basically a black version of the object underneath it. And so if you take a look here, basically what we've done is we've created a black shirt under our shirt. We then take that shirt, or sorry, that black layer, we again hide the whole thing and we blur it. So we use the blur filter in Photoshop so that it spreads out just a little bit beyond the edge of the shirt. Remember, it's basically hidden behind it at this point. And then we hide that entire layer, and then we go through and we just brush areas where we do want the shadow to show. We reveal those areas. So you can see we want it a little bit on this side. In this instance, our light is traveling left to right. That's why the shadows are here, the shadows are here. So we don't want a shadow here, for instance, but we do want a shadow here, for instance. So we look fairly carefully at where there should actually be shadows. There shouldn't be a shadow here, but there should be a shadow here. So we actually do two different layers of that. First we do what we call a broad shadow, which is a nice soft light shadow like this, and then we also do what's called a contact shadow. Contact shadow is just where the shirt touches the ground and you have that very, very small shadow. But the end result, when you take the two of those together, is you get a shadow that overall looks very soft, very gentle, and very realistic. So that's the basic process that we use to create a apparel photograph for one of our customers. And again, I would say probably about 60% of our work is done in Photoshop. But again, that allows us to go from something like this to something like this. Thanks for taking the time to view this tutorial. If you visit our online shop, you will see a promotion there to do a free trial if you'd like to try out our service. Thank you.